Welcome to Arnie's Class Podcast. I'm Arnie Aniel. I'm an HR development consultant, an international public speaker, a workshop facilitator, a coach, and an educator. Life is a great opportunity, and we all learn life lessons every day. This podcast is all about those lessons. Lessons like gratitude, confidence, happiness, mindset, and a lot more. Learning without action is information. Learning with action is transformation. Join me, learn, and transform yourself into a better you. Life mates, welcome to another episode of Arnie's Class. We are all different backgrounds, different families, different experiences, especially childhood experiences. Some of us are lucky enough to be born with wealthy families, positive and nurturing environment, with supportive people around us. Some people are not born with a wealth of families and with negative environment and without people who are supportive, especially if you are someone who's different. Different in a sense that you are different in what is defined to be normal or what is believed to be a part of the norms. So how do you create your path if you're in that kind of situation? How do you create your path if you are bullied? How do you create your path despite prejudices and discrimination? I totally believe that life is what you make it. How do we deal with those challenges in our lives? We all have our talents, our potentials, our gifts. And how do you use them depend on you. And I'm sure that each one of us has the ability, the capability to create our path to success, happiness, and fulfillment. And in this episode, my special guest, who is also from the Philippines, but based in New York, is going to share her experiences and how she created her path. You're going to hear the word bakla in this episode, which means gay. And that was used because it's different if you use that word, especially for the Filipinos listening. You know the impact if the word bakla is used instead of saying just gay. Life mates, listen with an open mind and an open heart. And tell me how you created or how will you create your path, especially if you're different. Listen and learn. Life mates, welcome back to Arnie's Class, another episode. And in this episode, I have a very special guest from the Philippines. For the first time, I have a guest from the Philippines, where I come from, but she's based in New York in the US. And I'm very excited because it's been a while, or maybe it's been a long while since the last time we had a chat. And my special guest is going to talk about how do you break the ceiling glass to create your own path despite of discrimination and prejudice. My dear listeners, my special guest is a clinical lab technologist, a humanitarian aid worker, a public speaker, and a transgender advocate with the Society of Transsexual Women in the Philippines, or of the Philippines, if I may say that. Please welcome my special guest, Miss Julie San Gaspar Papango. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Arnie. Thank you for having me here.
It's
So
my
nice to see you
pleasure.
again.
I know. I'm
It's
very
been a
glad that you
while.
said yes. Yes.
Anytime naman, as long as my schedule would permit.
Yes. Thank you. Jules, let's start.
Yeah,
Tell us
sure.
about your background.
Okay. So, like you, fellow kababayan. I'm originally from the Philippines. I've lived in the Philippines for 25 years before I did humanitarian aid work, moving around different countries. And then 2016, I moved here in the United States to migrate and hopefully to get the citizenship eventually. My background, the reason why when you ask me about the topic is because I think it's very fitting because I was assigned male at birth, but identify as a female. And if you would be very technical about it, I would identify as a person of transgender experience. And coming from the Philippines, which was back in the 80s, there was strong machismo culture. If you're a boy or assigned male at birth and you're acting effeminate or you're seeing signs of femininity, you would be bullied.
I totally
Right?
agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. And yeah, so basically, that's the start of my journey on getting to know myself, on being in touch and being aware of what is my purpose and my path, being who I am, and how to grow despite the adversity, the discrimination, the prejudices. And yeah, let's
But
just,
what age, Julie, that you realized
yeah,
that I'm a woman in a
yeah,
man's body or I'm female in a male's
yeah.
body?
Yeah. Actually, it was funny because there was no realization. It's just continuous awareness that I am a woman. I remember as early as 3 years old, I was playing with my cousins, and then I was just being myself. You know, as kids, you're very innocent. You're just acting who you are based on how you see yourself. And I was being teased by my cousins, you know, the term in the Philippines, the umbrella term called bakla, which encompasses a trans woman, an effeminate guy, a gay guy. So they were calling me bakla bakla. And I didn't know what the term was back then because for me, I'm just being myself. I'm just being JC, as what my family call me. And growing up, I tend to question why am I being called that term? And as the years pass by, the term become derogatory again and again to the point that, okay, this is putting me in a certain box in a society that limits my existence. And that limitation sort of affected my developmental years in a way that I know that it will not be very a straight path, no pun intended, for me. And it would not be a very easy ride because I'm non-stereotypical. I'm not someone who is very known as how society prescribes what a woman or a man is. And yeah, it was tough in the society. I was bullied like everyone else. At the same time, I was lucky in a way because my family was sort of not very, they were partly accepting. Their only limit was back then was for me to study well in school.
I see. So the family was supportive from the very beginning.
I would not say 100% supportive because they know that I was bakla, but they they will not encourage me to wear women's dresses.
I see.
There would be the barrier if they would see some femininity that they my brother or my dad would tell me like don't act like that, you know, those limits. But I was not like the other friends that I had who were physically maltreated. You know,
I
there's
see.
stories that
Yes.
some baklas in the Philippines they were drowned in vats of water until they would
Yeah.
man up, or
Yes.
like to kneel on like on beans on rice until they
Yes.
would really like
Exactly.
it's like a conversion therapy when you were little. I didn't experience any of those,
I see.
which
So
was nice.
no physical abuse from the
No.
family as like others. I see. But can you say that the acceptance or support was like half baked or let's just like only 50%? It's not really like how come I don't get full support?
Yeah, half baked, that definitely, because again, coming from a widely Catholic culture, and I come from, so by dad's side, they are five men and two women in their family. So all my uncles were like big guys, and as you know, in the Philippines, it's very having a, a boy would carry the family's name. And
Exactly.
in my case, they were sort of like, okay, so I'm not going to carry the family's name because for sure I'm not going to marry a woman. And
Okay.
one thing that I was bullied by the family in a way that I was always teased because there were not a lot of male cousins who would carry the family name, and me carrying the family name and unfortunately will not be really carrying the lineage is something that is a factor.
Let's see. How
But
about your
yeah,
mom and your siblings?
my mom was an educator, so as long as I would really like get good grades at school, they're okay with it. Like I would make my projects very flamboyant. They would know. Like they know what kinds of activities I participate in school. I would participate in theater and drama. I would participate in dance, choral, anything artistic and academic. I would participate as much as I can. And yeah, my mom is very supportive about that, and so is my dad. My sisters, I have an older sister and an older brother. I didn't went to the same high school that they went to. They went to a Catholic school. I did not, which was very fortunate, I think. And then, yeah, after that, college, that's when I was more exposed to the LGBT community and how to like what kind of paths can I use my voice and my talents to further voice out the issues. And that's when I started with the advocacy.
Let's
I
see.
did not physically transition back in college. I physically transitioned very late. I transitioned when I was already, I think, 25 or 26,
I
which
see.
was a very hard struggle because I know that once I take the first dose of hormones, there's no coming back. And I want to have that strong sense of the self that I am doing this because I want it. And at the same time, I would like to be to have a strong core because the models that I've seen of a trans woman in the Philippines, you know, back in the 80s, we have this actor called Roderick Paulate with all the movies, and the portrayal of a bakla is someone who's flamboyant, full
Yes.
makeup, working in the beauty salon. I
Quite
don't have,
loud.
yeah, quite loud. I don't have anything against that. It's just that back then I wanted to be a doctor in the first place. I know I have a strong background with the sciences and mathematics, and I would like to go a different path wherein to be a trans person in the sciences, or I was also trying to look into accounting back then, but the science won. And yeah, because as you know, in the Philippines, if you're bakla, you're contained, like, you know, in the Philippines, growing up, if you're bakla, your family or your friends would say, oh, yeah, we accept you because you're very creative,
Yes.
you know? So we're the baklas in the Philippines, in the fashion industry, beauty and fashion, and
Makeup
creative
artists,
art.
fashion designers.
Yeah. And that's one thing I like, but at the same time, I would love to do something else. And for me to go into the sciences was something challenging because it's not colloquial for people to see a trans woman who is a doctor or a med tech
Exactly.
or, you know,
Yeah.
and it was tough. And I needed to sort of like prove myself three times. One is because there's already like if you're a bakla and you're only a bak when they say like you're a bakla and you're not a cross dresser, like you're the gay male
Yes.
bakla, um or a gay guy, you need to work double time because you need to prove yourself. But being a trans woman, I felt like I needed to work 3 times because I need to delineate myself from saying that I'm not a gay guy, that I am a trans woman, and
Yes.
at the same time to harden that identity that although we have the term bakla, a gay guy is different from a trans woman, and
Exactly.
that I have my own sets of traits and talents that I can share. And yeah, it was a long process and I'm still working on it. And I
So,
was lucky to meet people who are very supportive of that. So when I graduated college, I started to work in a hospital for World War II veterans. So very strong machismo society as well. Back then, I was only androgynous. I was growing my hair, but I was not wearing feminine clothes. And I remember there were a lot of gay guys in the department who also would say negative things about me that don't act so feminine. Why do you
yeah.
need to grow your hair? Like, why can't you just be a masculine bakla? Those kinds of
Okay.
stuff.
The
And
pressure from the society or the group of people that's like surrounding you and things like that. Okay.
true.
Julie, before I ask you a lot about transition, can we just go back to the time wherein you were bullied? Can you share your
Yeah.
experiences when you were young?
Yeah. Basic bullying that you were not invited to play with other boys. If you play with the girls, you'll be teased. So there's the disparity of, okay, where I'm going to play. Should I play with the boys? Should I play with the girls?
Mm.
It's very confusing. Like I just want to play whatever kinds of, you know. Another thing was, again, I was a very creative teenager and I would like to explore more on like fashion, makeup, design. And I cannot totally explore that unless that's why I joined a lot of clubs in school because that's where I can explore more on those. But at home or like in general life, I cannot do that.
I
And
see.
I do that, the family would call me out of it. So that
Okay.
very subtle forms of discrimination, but it's in there. I was fortunate enough because I sort of in the school I went, if you're bakla and you're creative, you're sort of like admired.
Accepted? More accept more did you feel that you are more accepted because you're talented or
We're accepted because like in the Philippine culture in general, you're talented. So if there's competitions for different schools, they know the talents to tap. So in our class, there were like a core group of baklas.
okay. Group of gays, talented
Yeah.
gays.
Yes. And we have our own niche. So if we're needing someone for choreography, tap this. If we're needing someone for fashion design, tap this person. If we're needing someone for decor, tap this person. So we were sort of like a strong core, and
I
the
see.
batch knows that. And we were not bullied that much because they know that at the same time we're very advantageous for the batch. We're bringing the crown
Okay.
to the class. Yeah.
But when did you feel, or maybe the question is, did you feel any pain of those bullying, or were you hurt emotionally? When did you feel that, wait, this is not right?
High school, high school, not much. It was more on when I was on my professional career. Because again, we have a very accepting community in school. And if I'm not accepted in the boys clique, I have my gay friends to play with. And I have girlfriends as well in school. So it's not something that we were not really like excluded from the whole activities in school. So it was a fun experience in school. It discrimination was very subtle and yeah. It was more on my professional career.
When you started working?
Yes, because that's when I was transitioning from male to female, and that was something that I think the Filipino society or the department I was working with was not very ready for. That they thought that they're just okay for me being a gay guy. They're not okay for me being a trans woman.
Yeah, to transition from a man to become a
Yes.
woman. I think I believe during those times, people in the Philippines will even think that you have mental health issues.
Yes. Yeah. It was tough. I didn't really fully transition until I left the Philippines. When I left the Philippines, I was still androgynous, but I was already starting my hormone replacement. And I didn't, only one of my good friends know about that. And then in 2009, I did humanitarian aid work. And every time I would go to a project, I would always carry my hormones with me, but I would still present masculine in the project. But every time I would go on a project, people would think that I'm a lesbian because there was already the feminine features because of the hormone replacement.
I see. With all the
Yes.
changes that's happening, that taking place in your body, what's the biggest factor, or what's the deciding factor, Julie, that you said I'm going to transition from a man to become a woman?
I would not say like deciding factor na because it's not really a question that I am a man becoming a woman. It's always a question that I am a woman trying to unfold to be a better version of a woman that I am.
I see.
Yes, which is this just the you wake up one morning and feeling that you're in a cage, that I know I can do better. Like I know I can create my own path, like as what the Stoics prefer, like create your own path. That's one thing I was craving for pre-transition, that I would like to create my own path, that I don't want to be limited in the fact that I'm a gay guy or what the people society thinks that I'm a gay guy who's creative and talented. I would like to create my path as a trans woman who is in the sciences, who is a humanitarian aid worker, who is not mainstream. Because again, as I told you, the role models that we have in the Philippines are flamboyant,
Yes.
entertainers, beauty pageant queens, sex workers.
Yes.
And again, I don't have anything against any of those, but I would like to have my own path to curve. So that's when I went with being a med tech and a humanitarian aid worker. So I just said like, I want to do this.
Not to
Yeah.
be a stereotype, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you tell your family, or did you ask them,
They
or
already know. And it was funny because I was already on my first project then. And then 2009, 2010, my brother was getting married. No, 2009, yeah. And then my cousin was asking me if I'm attending the wedding. So I told her like, if they would allow me to wear a dress for the wedding, then I would attend because I was overseas back then. So she told my aunts and my mom, and then they said, then wear a dress. So
nice?
it's sort of what the go signal. So I surprised them. I went home, and then that's the first time I presented female,
I
like
see.
female clothes, female dresses. And it was funny because and it was nice because my mom was telling everyone in the family, don't call me JC anymore, call me with my preferred name.
I
In
see.
my
So
brother's wedding.
nice. That's
Yeah.
really nice. Well, so you changed your name
In the
from.
family, not legally, like instead of going by JC, then they call me Julie or Princess. So that, and then so it was sort of like coming out because I didn't really came out as a gay guy. They already knew growing up. So I came out as a trans woman. And since then, it was not a question. When I had nieces and nephews, my siblings, my cousins would always introduce me as their aunt. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge from
Um,
transitioning?
transitioning, the awkward stages we're in, you would feel like there's there's a thing called being passable when you transition. Passable is wherein you would not be seen as the gender that you were assigned. Passable, like if I would present in society for people to perceive me as the gender that I identify. So if I walk in the streets and I would talk to people, they would not assume that I was male at birth. You know, that was an awkward stage. It was probably for a year or two wherein you would go to the malls and then you're dressed up very femininely, and then the the cashier would address you as a sir.
Okay.
It's like you're undergoing a second stage of puberty, and it takes years for that. And then yeah, that was the challenging part, physically transition, because there's always the trigger that I'm not passable, I'm not feminine enough. They're still clocking me as what they say. And I want to be passable enough. And yeah, and then after a few years, I achieved that. And it was nice because now that I have that passing privileges, I feel like it's the opposite, because now that I have the passing privileges, being tall and not being stereotypical Filipino features,
Yes.
and now living here in the US, people would see me like physically attractive, if I may say, like tall, skinny,
Skinny
very
or sexy?
um okay, sexy. I've lost a lot of weight since working third shift. So yeah, so that's something I'm thankful for, that the process was very advantageous to my side. Another challenging part was being accepted with the company that I was working with, and with the healthcare force, that I would like to present as female and I would like to present as Julie. What kind of support are you offering, or can I get, if in case I would get harassed or things like that? Because again, I was working in different countries, and not a lot of countries I was going was very accepting of the transgender experience. So I need to
That's
be
right.
very stealth when I go on a project. And unfortunately, I had co-expats who were not very good about it. And there were a few times wherein I called the whistleblowing team in the organization I worked with, just to call it, hey, this is discrimination, this is harassment. And back then, it was not really mainstream that they would really put an effort how to resolve those kinds of issues. And yeah, when I moved here 2016, I stopped doing humanitarian aid work. Eventually, I would like to go back again when I get my residency here in the US. So that when I moved here, I already presented as Julie, all feminine. And yeah, everyone here is so accepting. And it was refreshing because it's like there was no burden anymore being a trans woman or being a bakla back in Asia, because here they just see me as Julie, this tall
As a
Filipino.
person.
Yes. Smart, well traveled, positive things about me. And being a transgender person is very last on their list. Like, and that opened a lot of avenues. So since I moved here, I was fortunate enough to be part of the 40 under 40 in 2019 for the laboratory professionals. It's an organization, the biggest organization of lab professionals here in the US, who also accredits other lab professionals in other countries. So out of hundreds of applicants, I was one of the 40 under 40.
Wow,
And
congratulations, Julie.
and out of the 40, managed to be on the top 5. So that was a huge break in a way, because that's when I told myself, oh, being trans, this is good in a way, as to show other younger trans person out there that you could create your own way, that aside only from being a humanitarian aid worker, clinical lab scientist, I am being acknowledged by my colleagues with the profession that I chose, not because I'm trans, but because I am someone who's capable of uplifting the profession in my own
Exactly.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Julie,
yeah,
before I start asking about that, how you created that,
yeah,
can you tell us the details about those prejudices and
yeah,
discriminations that you experience?
yeah, yeah. So one time I was in Cambodia actually. So we met in Thailand in 2017.
15.
Yeah,
Yeah, the first time.
2015.
Yes.
Yeah, 2015. So I was working in Cambodia back then. Before that, I was in Cambodia for my first project in 2009. So when I first went to Cambodia in 2009, I was still presenting androgynous.
Okay.
And my coworkers love me. They know that, Buddhist culture, like in Thailand, they're very accepting of the katoys.
Yes.
And yeah, so my colleagues love me. They know my capacity as an expat clinical lab technician. And when I left there, I left in good terms with everyone. And then after that, someone from a different country replaced me. And then after that person, there's another person who replaced him. And then when I've learned that they're closing the project, I asked if I can go back to close the project because I opened the project. So we were doing tuberculosis testing there, then in Cambodia. When I arrived in Cambodia, I was reading all the emails between the lab expat that I was replacing and the, the headquarters in the capital. And there was one thing there that she said that, is this Julie the one who was here before as my legal name? The
Okay.
guy.
Yes.
Because I would like to tell you that the staff in here doesn't want him to
Okay.
come here because he was making untoward advances to the male staff.
What an accusation.
Yes. So that was the email. And so I was questioning myself because I said, like, I know my coworkers, and back then Facebook was starting to be more popular, and my coworkers knew that I transitioned from my legal name to being Julie. And when they know that I was coming, they were so excited because they said, like, oh, we love Julie, like she's very quiet, she knows how to talk to us, and she's very competent, those kinds of stuff. So I asked this co-expat who told her about it. And then she was dropping names, and then she was saying, like, no worry, I already fixed it, I talked to them, blah blah blah. So okay, so I talked to the people who she was saying that,
The names
because
that she
yeah,
dropped.
yeah,
Okay.
and because I know these people and I know they will not say those stuff. And again, I believe those people more than this person. And what she did was she erased the thread of the emails and denied everything with the headquarters. And me being being the advocate and knowing that everything needs to be documented, I already have the copies of all those emails. So I've I've contacted the whistleblowing and the harassment committee in the headquarters in Europe about it. Unfortunately, their only response was, we talked to the person and she was so apologetic about it. And
And that's
yeah,
it?
yes, it
That's
didn't do
all they
anything.
did?
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
that was back in 2016. No, 14 when I moved to Cambodia. So yeah, and then again, being the Filipino as we are, resilient,
Of course.
and we shine whatever we do. So I just did
Yes.
my work, and yeah, we closed the project, ended up in good terms with everyone again. That was good. And it was funny because now, 2020, 2021, the same organization is being more open to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes. Now they are really promoting it everywhere. DNI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. I think all
Yeah,
organizations are doing their best to. I just hope that it's not a hip, Julie. You
yeah.
know? I just hope.
I think slowly. Well, I'm really happy because this is one thing one of my um, co-advocates were saying that it might not happen now in 1 year, 2 years, but eventually it will happen. And after a few years, it happened because I'm the only out transgender woman in the movement in that organization. And when they were asking for kinds of harassment and exploitations that happened in the field, I'm the only vocal person saying that there's harassment towards LGBTQ. And sometimes it's towards within the community. Like there's a gay guy who sort of like discriminated against me. And yeah. And yeah, it's been happening for I think 3 years with this organization. Like we're having discussion, and what we did was to have like like a welcome package for everyone who is LGBTQI identified, and what kind of support we can give them for everyone going to a project. So it's working slowly.
So the organization is really doing something
Yes.
about DEI. It's not like a shallow
So
thing that they just want to be a part of what's
yeah,
happening in the world of this DEI thing.
because they're aware that they're not very well versed of the issue, so they're trying to learn. And there's a lot of LGBTQI in the community in the organization, which I was surprised as well because that when they created the Rainbow Network within the organization, that sort of created space on okay, how can we have a more collective voice, and how can we help other people who are coming in the movement. So it's nice to have that face in the movement that if you're a trans woman, yes, you're welcome in here.
Good. I'm very happy to hear that. Julie, how did you create this happy life, successful life that you have, if I may call it successful and
Successful.
happy? How
Yeah.
did you create it out of those experiences?
Number one is to surround yourself with people who are very supportive and loving. There's people who would, there's not so welcoming people around, as you know. And I'm very good at not clinging to those kinds of people. I'm very good at reading people who are very good energy around me. And I was fortunate that I found those people who would create space for me. Like when I joined the movement as a humanitarian aid worker, there was this Chinese girl who interviewed me. She was in the human resource department, and I was very open about her. And she would always remind me until we're friends until now. And she would always remind me that I remember when you were being interviewed, you're very good with how you were treating your students. That's why we accepted you. And I didn't know that I was like when she visited the hospital I worked with that she was looking about that. And I that's one thing I'm very thankful about because yeah, because she was one who created and advocated for me to be in the movement. Another person was when I gave a talk in one convention in Colorado Springs, there was the president of this society for laboratory professionals. And she encouraged me to apply for the 40 under 40 because she said that what you're doing is not very common for lab professionals. Number one, lab professionals are not aware that we can do humanitarian aid work, like the global health perspective.
Something else aside from laboratory outside of
Yes,
this.
yes, because here in the US, most people are just familiar that okay, you can go in the academy, you can do in research, you can do hospitals. They don't know that you can help other countries. So
And do
that was
something
sort of
else.
my yeah, that was sort of my brand that I was trying to figure out. Like, okay, a trans person who is a humanitarian aid worker, it's sort of like beauty with a purpose, if I may say that.
That's
So
nice.
yeah, now I'm more than my pretty face. Now that I have the passing privileges, I can do and offer other things with the global community. So that president opened that space for me. So and then other friends that are very accepting of like who I am. So
I
I'm
see.
thankful about that. So surrounding yourself with good friends and good people.
Okay.
Another thing is be aware of your triggers and the trauma. mental health is not something that's very openly discussed in the Philippines, in Asia in
Yes.
general. So that's one thing I needed to work on because I've only been aware of that in my 30s. So I needed to work again a lot, like fast, to identify what kinds of traumas and triggers I have, and then to reorient the way I was wired growing up, because there's a lot of negative self-talk growing up in the Philippines that you're not enough, you're not pretty enough, like you
Yes.
always fail, like you can only exist in a specific space that's provided to you by society, like you cannot go more than that. So once I identify that, no, that I can break that glass ceiling, I am breaking that glass ceiling, then more things unfolded, and I'm glad that I can open other spaces for other individuals. Yeah.
Any
So
other
those two,
things? Yeah. So
yeah,
so
basically those
surround
two things.
yourself with positive people, and then
And
second,
then basically knowing yourself, your trauma, how
be
what your
be more
strengths.
aware of yourself.
Yeah, the self-awareness part. Yeah, know thyself.
I see.
And yeah,
Any
it's
other
a
things, Julie, that really help you to become who you are now? Aside from those two that you already mentioned, positive people around you, and then know thyself, you know yourself, the awareness. Any other things that really help you?
yeah, having the growth mindset always. Wherein whatever opportunities you have, just check like, what can I learn from this? Adversity or positive experience, whatever you have experienced, just ask yourself, how can I learn from this experience? How can I be a better version of the self with what's happening? Someone mistreated me. How can I grow beyond this? Someone gave a positive feedback on what kind of success I'm getting. How can I improve myself for other people's? So yeah, a growth mindset, and yeah, still working on it actually every day. It's always
I
a
think we are all working on that.
yeah, of course.
If
Yeah.
there's one thing that you can give advice,
Mhm.
not just only to those who are trans, but the people in general, especially the younger generation, if
Yeah.
there's something that you can advise to them in order for them to create their own path, if they are like experiencing any discriminations and prejudices, what is one thing that you will tell them?
Life is like a whale, as what they say. It's a cycle. It's not always you'll be down. Sometimes you'll be up, and sometimes you'll be down. And any experiences, again, it's part of life. The way I usually put it as an analogy is that if you have a white sheet of paper and then you fold it, one side would be the positive experience, and then one side is the negative experience. If you forget the negative experience and only like accept the positive experiences, you're not getting the whole page of the paper. You need to
Exactly.
accept both. You need to accept both so that you know how to traverse this life, because again, part of life is having both kinds
Both
of,
sides.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Julie,
How
what
are you?
this what decision or decisions you've made in the past that have impact on who you are at the moment?
Letting go of the triggers, or being more aware of the traumas and triggers that was inculcated by a society who has some toxicity in it. I'm not saying everything is toxic. Growing up, I would say that it helped. Having the toxicity made me realize that there's a lot of positivity about it. So being aware of both, setting up boundaries, and accepting that there's work to be done on how to be more aware of any thoughts and emotions that I would create, because thoughts and emotions would create your actions, your actions would create the habit, your habit would create the personality that you have. And being aware of those, and letting go. Oh no, I won't say letting go, like being in good terms with those, because it would come out every now and then. But the way you process it, the way, instead of having a mindset of I would like to feel better, but having a mindset of being better at feeling and thinking. Yeah, that I think that was the best decision I made, like to work on those kinds of trauma and triggers.
Very well said. And I hope that those who are listening will really get something out of that, because
I
it's not
hope.
easy. I know it's not easy. It's not
Yeah.
easy. But and Jules, if you or maybe someone else is interested to write your life as a book, or what do you think will be the title and why? But
Oh
what
my
kind of
God.
book will it be?
I think I would call it Julie's Jewel Jar. That's my Instagram handle as well. Because when people say like there's always this quote like you're a diamond, you're unique. I Yeah, but at the same time, I don't want to tell people that you're a diamond. I would like to give them the option that you can be any kind of jewel. And in my jewel jar, you can pick whatever kind of jewel as you are. You can create your own path. It can be even not a jar, it could be a box or anything. But it's a book about choices, making your own choices, and breaking the glass ceiling, like picking something from the jar of
But what
life.
will you, sorry, Jules, but what will
No.
you tell the people if they say, but I don't have a choice, Jules?
Hmm. We're always given a choice. I think that's one advantage of having logic and free will. They're always given a choice. It's up to you how you pick those choices. I think there's always the battle is not even started when you were given the choice. The battle starts when the choice is being concocted in reality, as you may say. Like sometimes you think that, okay, you're given a red pill and a blue pill without even thinking that, is there a green pill, a yellow pill?
Or
You
maybe
know, is
combine
there,
those two pills.
yeah,
So Julie's jewel jar.
at least jewel jar. A
JJJ.
mouthful. Yeah, a mouthful.
We're almost finished with this, Julie, and I want to ask you if there's one greatest lesson that you've learned all throughout your beautiful, challenging life.
So far, so far.
Yes, what will it be?
Everything will get better. So cliche, but yeah, everything
Cliche
will get
but
better.
true.
Yeah, things will get better. And living in the now, because if we live in the past, that would make you depressed. If we live in the future, that would make you anxious. And it's hard to create a battle wherein your commandants are general depression and major anxiety.
I like that.
So as the Buddha said, attachment is the root of all evil. So if you're
Yes.
attached to the past and the future, then you'll suffer. No, attachment is the root of all suffering. So if you live in the now, you appreciate what is happening now. Like this is very nice, and I'm very thankful for this. If you live in the now, knowing that this now is a good now, and it might not be a good now, but it will become better.
Yes. As they said, learn from the past. And if you want a
Yeah,
bright future, you can do it right now.
yeah.
Because
I
others,
remember, there was one drag queen. She said that if one foot is in your past and one foot is in the future, you're peeing on the present.
exactly. And you're messing it up, I believe.
Yes, you're messing it up.
But that
So
that's nice. I think
yeah,
that's a great one. Because a
true.
lot of people, I think, are too focused on what's going to happen in their future. And then they
Yeah,
forget to enjoy the present.
exactly.
And the others
True.
are living in their past that they cannot move on, and then it's affecting their lives, and are not even aware of that.
Yeah, because those are two things you cannot control. You can only control your mindset and how you approach those stuff.
Exactly. Your perception, your action, and decisions are the things that you are in control of 100%.
Exactly.
One last question. This is my last question. Julie, will you encourage if someone asks you, like a gay guy asks you, is it okay if I become trans? Will you encourage? Or how will you handle that?
I would support. I'm always an advocate for choice. Anything, life choices, I'm always an advocate for choice. And I'm a very strong advocate of holding spaces for other people. If someone would approach me and tell me that I feel like a trans woman, I'm not a gay guy, how do I start with this? I would ask the person, what kind of comfort do you need? What kind of support would you be needing? Because different people would have different needs. Some people would say that for now, I just like to be who I am. I don't want to transition physically yet. I just want to tell you. Some people would say like, I would like to physically transition, but I don't know how. I don't have the means. And I know people who knows other people who can help. If I don't know the answer, I can reach to the community. So yeah, if there's actually I had a few friends who reached out. Like I thought even before like they're straight guys when I started meeting them, and then they came out to me, and then I'm still friends with them when they transition. So it's nice to be an instrument for those kinds of people to be the better version of themselves. So always, I won't start with saying that you should do this, you should do that, you should this. I'm not a should person. I'm always what do you need person. How can I create a space for you? Because more often than not, they already know what they want. They just needed someone to help them navigate that.
Nice. As an I thought that was like my last question, but then you there's another one that I want. What's your message being an advocate of transgender? And if
Yeah.
there's one message that you want the world to know about trans,
Yeah.
Julie, this is your opportunity. What will you tell the people?
Like every other person that you meet in the street, we're your siblings, we're your colleagues, we're your parents, we're your children, your friends, and like everyone else, I would like to always ask for compassion and empathy on every person, not even to the LGBT community. Every person who are underprivileged, who doesn't have the capacity to navigate this world as smoothly as the other people that has the privilege. And to the LGBT community, I hope we could always hold space for each other, to be an advocate for each other instead of fighting about each other. And yeah, to have a more collective and stronger voice.
Thank you very much. Very well said. Julie, thank you very much for saying yes to be my guest. And
Anytime, Arnie.
yes, maybe next time because I'm
Thank
planning to
you.
do another one, not a podcast, but more on a YouTube video, but shorter than this. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the time, for sharing your experiences, your thoughts, your wisdom. And to all my listeners, life mates, if you like this episode, please follow, subscribe, and share to your family and friends. And I'm sure you learned something from this episode. Thank you very much again, Julie. It's a wonderful time.
Thanks,
I want,
Arnie.
yes, and I want to wish you a Merry Christmas in advance
Ah,
because,
Happy New Year. Happy 2020.
yes,
I hope
it's
it's better for all of
December.
us.
I
Yeah.
know. Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.